I've tried many methods to learn French from scratch in the last 4 years, and I found that the most effective techniques all involved live instruction from a real teacher. And if you want to learn a language online with a real teacher, the two best platforms I used were Lingoda and Preply. Grâce à cette méthode, j'ai pu améliorer mon français et enrichir mon vocabulaire et parler avec plus de confiance. So if you're wondering which platform you should try, in this video I'll describe my personal experience using both Preply and Lingoda, and I'll do a comparison to help you decide which would be better for you depending on your situation and your goals. So first, what are the main differences between Lingoda and Preply? Lingoda is an online platform for learning certain languages through live small group classes, and they have trained instructors that guide students through their set curriculum. Preply, on the other hand, is an online platform that connects students with private teachers for almost every language. Preply students and their teachers can have the freedom to design their lessons however they want, and it can range from just simple conversational practice to very focused exam prep and everything in between. So, keeping these differences in mind, I'll go through a few scenarios to help you determine which platform is better for you. The first thing to consider is, what is the language you want to learn? So like I said, Lingoda only offers classes for Spanish, French, English, German, and Italian. If you want to learn any other language, then Preply is the better choice. But another thing to consider is what level you're learning. So Lingoda currently offers these languages up to a certain level. And if you're learning any of these languages beyond the levels that they offer, then Preply again would be the better choice. For example, I loved using Lingoda, but I completed all their classes at their highest level, which is B2 for French. Now that I'm at a C1 level, I'm no longer actively using Lingoda, and instead I'm continuing to meet with my Preply tutor every week. But that said, if Lingoda happened to start offering French classes beyond B2 in the future, I would happily start using the platform again. So on that same note of considering your level, if you're a total beginner, I think Lingoda is the better choice. Because Lingoda's course material is standardized, regardless of which teacher is assigned to the class, there's more structure, which is better for beginners. And I think that if you're starting to learn a language from scratch, it's helpful to attend these collaborative small group classes because you can benefit from receiving direct attention from a real teacher, and at the same time you can also learn by observing other students' experiences. Lingoda's format is also really consistent, which I think makes it a good learning environment for someone who's just starting. On the other hand, Preply's lessons are designed by each individual tutor and therefore can vary greatly when it comes to structure. So that being said, I think if you already have some experience learning the language and you have specific questions to address, Preply is the better option. I personally started using the platform when I was at a B2 level of French because I wanted to work on improving my general conversational skills. And my Preply lessons were great because my teacher would hear me speak and she would identify all the areas where I struggled. And she would then design our lessons to include the exact grammar exercises that I needed to be working on. And because I had already spent some time learning French in other classes and by other methods prior to using Preply, I was also able to draw from my personal experience and communicate to my teacher which subjects I was already curious about, or anything else that I wanted to focus on during our sessions. But to expand on that point, if you want conversational practice with one-on-one attention, then Preply is definitely the best option. So even though I live in Paris and was making an effort to learn French by going to classes, I noticed that when I was speaking with native speakers, that I wasn't always being corrected when I would make mistakes, and therefore I wasn't learning from them. So I specifically sought out a private tutor on Preply that would correct me when I'm speaking freely and casually in French, which has been so helpful. So Lingoda does offer private classes if you want one-on-one attention, but they still generally follow their set curriculum, so there's more structure and therefore less flexibility when it comes to the subject matter that's covered in each lesson. But that being said, if you want to follow a set curriculum, then Lingoda is the better option. When you sign up on Lingoda, you can preview the lesson material for each class, and you can choose which ones to attend based on the topics you are interested in. And after each class, you can download a PDF of the lesson material with the teacher's notes so that you can practice even further and review it later if you want. And because the lessons are standardized within Lingoda's platform, I noticed that the teachers are all well prepared ahead of each class, so the experience is ultimately better for each student that attends. I also think that Lingoda is better if you like more collaborative learning environments. I think its structure is unique and it also offers secondary benefits that I personally found to be helpful thanks to these live small group settings. When I was using Lingoda, I noticed that I was often being exposed to different personalities and opinions and backgrounds and accents, both from the teachers and also from other students in my classes. And it made me feel like I was learning and absorbing from an environment that modeled the real world. And because the classes were collaborative and encouraged participation, as much as I was learning from the course material and from the teacher, I felt like I was also learning by observing other students that were asking questions and from their participation. So next, when it comes to pricing, both platforms have subscription models. So for Preply, when you are searching their network to choose a teacher, you can use filters to narrow down the options. You can filter for things like being a native speaker, and by time zone, and by specialty, and also by price if you have a specific budget. You can then subscribe to a number of classes based on that price, which is set by the teacher. And the minimum subscription tier for Preply is 4 classes every 4 weeks, and if you want to do more than that, you pay the same rate for the additional classes. On the other hand, Lingoda is also a subscription with fixed pricing, but if you subscribe to more classes per month, then you get more discounts and you can pay less per class. Lingoda also offers more seasonal promotions for extra savings, and I'll also link my discount code in the description so you can save even more. Now, when it comes to which platform offers the most flexibility, I would definitely say Preply. Preply has a more forgiving cancellation policy, which is 12 hours before the start of class. On the other hand, Lingoda's cancellation policy is much more strict. It's 3 days for regular students, or 7 days for students that are participating in their learning challenge, which is called the Lingoda Sprint, which I'll discuss more in detail later in this video. So another key difference between the two platforms is if you need a certificate to prove your level, then Lingoda is the better choice. For example, if your job or your resume or portfolio asks for proof of your proficiency in a language, then a certificate from Lingoda could be sufficient to support that. It is a reputable and recognized platform, and it's nice because it allows students to easily generate the certificate, which states that they have completed a certain number of language classes within internationally standardized levels that are offered on their platform. As for Preply, I remember after completing my 30th session, I got an email from them with a certificate stating that I had completed 30 sessions. But it was really basic and didn't even say anything about my level, so I wouldn't really be able to include that in a professional portfolio or anything. But another thing that does make Preply a better choice is if you need help with a specific subject or project or for work. For example, I spent a few of my private Preply sessions preparing for my first ever interview in French. I was nervous about it, and I really wanted my responses to sound natural and honest, and most importantly, grammatically correct. And so we worked on delivering my responses, and my teacher gave me great advice and great feedback, and I went into the interview feeling really prepared. I've also noticed that when I was searching for French teachers on Preply, you can filter for those that specialize in preparation for language tests like the DELF or the DALF or the TEF or the TCF. And you can also filter for any other tests for other languages on the platform. By contrast, because Lingoda's format is more structured and defined within their curriculum, it's not the best choice for someone who has very specific needs. But if you're the kind of learner that needs motivation through gamification and rewards, then I recommend a Lingoda Sprint. So this is a unique program for new users which offers a hefty reward to students that participate and can attend a certain number of classes in a certain amount of time. The challenge is called a sprint, which is 30 classes in 60 days, or a super sprint, which is 60 classes in 60 days. The rules and requirements can seem a little complicated, but the reward for successfully completing the challenge is considerable. You get 50% of your money back to your original payment method, or 100% of your money back in the form of credit to be used on future classes. And as far as I know, Preply doesn't offer a similar challenge. I successfully completed Lingoda Sprint and definitely recommend it. The consistent routine and commitment helped me build a healthy habit of learning and practicing my French, and I received my 50% cashback reward within a few weeks. So, when you take all these comparisons in mind, it's clear that both platforms each have their strengths. And in my experience using both at the same time, I felt like they were actually pretty complementary to one another. I've tried and tested many methods to learn French quickly, but I felt like the most effective technique overall was to be actively using multiple methods at the same time so that you can draw more connections and apply what you learn and support your long-term memory. If you are interested in hearing more about my favorite techniques for learning languages, then definitely check out my other videos. My channel is essentially about trying new things as an adult, like I did with learning French. And it's also about the importance of finding yourself through your hobbies and getting out of your comfort zone. So if that sounds like you, then don't forget to subscribe. You can also leave me a comment below. I'm always happy to connect, and I will see you next time.